Do you want to get creative and add the Dolce Gusto Creativa single-serve coffee machine to your own at-home coffee shop? Well, we'll help you to answer that question today here on Aromacup.com. Hi everyone, I'm Brian with Aromacup.com, and thank you as always for joining me here in my virtual coffee shop brought to you by Aromacup.com. In today's video, I'm talking about the Dolce Gusto Creativa single-serve coffee machine. It's a pretty crazy looking machine, as you can see. As single-serve machines go, this is certainly one of the most unique looking that I've ever encountered, and it's pretty unique in the way that it brews. We'll be talking about all that, but before we go into that, let's talk about what comes in the box with the Dolce Gusto Creativa. In the box for the Creativa, you're going to find, of course, the Creativa itself, which is not huge. It's not a big machine. It's not a small machine. It's just about somewhere in the middle. Because of its kind of strange shaping, it seems like it probably would fit in most countertop situations. It might take up a little more space than expected, but it is pretty compact. You'll also get this drip tray, which is useful for emptying your spent pods into because it has a sleeve in it that will allow you to pull out, empty those pods, and then just clean the whole thing. You get your instruction manual, of course, and you will get a variety pack of Dolce Gusto pods to try out with your Creativa so you can start to get an idea of how these pods are going to work and which ones you like. That's everything that comes in the box. Let's talk about the accessories of the machine and its overall operation. Now, starting from the bottom of the machine, we have our drip tray, of course. And the drip tray is removable. We can place the drip tray in different locations in order to be able to minimize the amount of splashing we get if we're using smaller mugs, tumblers, things like that. Most folks probably be good to just keep it on the lowest setting. Moving up, we have our actual brewing station, as it were, and the way we access that is by flipping up this locking handle and then opening up the tray. Now inside the tray is where we're going to find our pods. I have a pod here that we had used previously, and this is where we can simply place our pod. And the cool thing about these trays is that they are a little bit magnetized, so when you slide it in, it just sort of clicks in and locks to the back, and then you can close up that locking lever on the top, and that actually punctures your pod and you're ready to start brewing. Move on up and you're going to find this little LCD screen in the center of the Creativa. Now, this is the only Dolce Gusto machine that has a screen like this, and I'm not going to go into every single option on this screen because there are a lot of them, and I mean a lot. And when I say that, I'm talking about all of the different coffee options that you can brew using the Creativa. And we're going to go ahead and just move the machine just a little bit like this so that you can see the screen a little more clearly. Now, as I say, there's a lot of different features on this screen, and we essentially scroll through these by using this little scroll wheel on the top of the machine. It feels like a scroll wheel for a mouse, for a computer mouse, which is kind of cool. It's clicky and rubberized, and so it's really easy to navigate these options on the screen. But these options on the screen are what we use to brew our different types of coffee pods. And as I say, it's a little hard to explain every single option on here, but the basic idea is essentially that you're going to find the name of the pod that you're brewing in the list, and then you'll utilize, there's a button with a check mark on it, and if you press that, it'll start brewing. And programmed into the machine is the temperature and the amount of water that should be used to brew that pod. There's also a back button, which looks like a little circular arrow, and that's going to allow you to go back after you've made a selection. So there's a ton of different names in here for all of these different pod types to use with the machine. There's also an option to enter your own pod type into the machine, and you'll do that by making use of a code that is actually on the inside of a box of Dolce Gusto pods. Now that code will be entered into the machine. That tells the machine how it should brew the pod. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment here as I'm brewing some coffee, because it's a little bit complex, and I think that that goes against the ease of using this machine. But I had said before in past videos of some of these other machines I wanted to do more with this scroll wheel, and I kind of got my answer because there's a ton I can do with this scroll wheel now on the machine. You have your power button on the my right hand side of the machine. It glows solid green when it's ready to brew. And then on the back we have our water tank. This is a 50-ounce water tank, kind of cool looking, looks like a half beach ball essentially. You simply take this lid off of the top of it, fill it up, and you're good to brew. 50 ounces is a pretty good amount of water. You're probably not going to have to refill this consistently, but if you have friends over, you're probably going to refill it a couple different times, depending especially on the type of coffee that you brew. So let's dive in and talk about actually brewing some coffee using the Creativa. First off, before we start brewing, let's just make a note about Dolce Gusto pods. Now, Dolce Gusto single-serve pods only work with Dolce Gusto machines. They're not going to work with other machines, and other pod types aren't going to work with a Dolce Gusto machine either. That's because they are specifically designed for this machine. You can see they have this sort of beveled edge on the bottom and an outlet. This is where your coffee is going to come out as it brews. On the top, you have what we've come to know with most single-serve machines, which is this foil lid that gets punctured when it's time to start brewing some coffee. In this case, I have a Grande Mild Morning Blend. Now, on the top of these pods, there is an indicator that tells you how much water you should brew into this pod, but that really only applies to the other Dolce Gusto machines where I can choose how much water I'm going to brew into the pod. In the case of this machine, everything is done automatically for me, but it's done utilizing that code that I spoke of earlier. Now, this Grande Mild Morning Blend, I should note, was not pre-programmed into my Creativa machine, so I did manually enter it, and that was a process that I found a little bit strange, to be honest. I'll talk about it again in a second. Let's just go ahead and brew here so we can show you how this works. I'm just going to place my pod into my tray, slide that tray in, and lock it down. Now, on the screen, I need to find the brew type that I would like to brew with. So I'm going to find the one that I pre-programmed here, which was by entering that code into the machine. I'm going to place my mug, and now I'm going to press the OK or the check mark button on the machine. And the screen gives me a little readout. It says on its way, and it shows me a little progress meter that's going to tell me as the process of my coffee brewing. I think that this is cool. I like the idea behind it. It sort of seems like a little bit of a move to do a BrewBot kind of functionality like what we've seen with Tassimo machines by Bosch. I think it falls a little bit flat, I'm going to be honest, and my reasoning for that is that in order to enter this Grande Morning Blend into my Creativa, I had to first enter the name, and the only way I can do that is by utilizing the scroll wheel and selecting letter by letter. So I have to enter the name. And after I've entered the name, I enter a code. That code tells the machine how it should brew the coffee. So it was a little drawn out, to be honest. Even for a guy like me who deals with these kinds of things constantly and works with coffee machine technology, I thought it was a little drawn out. I would have liked it more if I would have been able to enter that code and just immediately have the machine pull up the name of the pod and, of course, the information it needed to brew that pod. That's my own feeling on it. Yours might be different. Again, there were a ton of different pre-programmed beverages already in this machine, but strangely enough, my one pod, my Grande Morning Blend, was not there. I had to manually enter it, and I didn't want to enter that whole name. So it's not the biggest deal, but I just think it's something to keep in mind, especially if you're somebody who likes to just kind of simply use a machine and not think too much about it. Let's measure the temperature of our brew that we've just done and see what we get, because I've been getting differing numbers from the Dolce Gusto machines on the brew temperature that I've been getting out of these machines. Typically, I'm falling somewhere between 170 and 180 degrees, and it looks like today I am going to reach about 180 degrees. So that's pretty good. There's a 15 bar pressure pump in this machine, and 180 degree brew temp is not too shabby, especially if you like a hotter brew. I think that's pretty good. The coffee quality I've found to be pretty impressive coming out of the Dolce Gusto machines. The only thing I will say again is, like I say, that whole programming option was just a little bit strange for me. It took time, and if you're someone who just likes the the quick, easy option to making a cup of coffee, it might not be there with the Creativa, not immediately at least until you program it in. What are you going to pay if you want to add the Creativa to your own at-home coffee shop? You're looking at about $199 is the suggested retail price for this unit. It's the most expensive of the Dolce Gusto machines. If you want to find out where you can purchase and add this machine to your own at-home coffee shop, check out the link in the description here on our video. What's my bottom line on the Dolce Gusto Creativa single-serve coffee machine? I think it's very cool. I think it looks really cool. It doesn't look like any single-serve machine I've ever encountered. It makes a good cup of coffee, a nice hot cup of coffee. It's very easy to make that cup of coffee by simply selecting my beverage and pressing a button. But the thing that I will put as a mark against it, as I say, is that in order to find what I'm going to brew, I have to scroll through a list of a lot of different options, find that and brew, and if my option is not there, I'm going to have to enter it manually, which is a little bit of a drag. The only other mark I'll give against it that I have been mentioning for anybody else who is wondering out there is that these pods are not recyclable. So it's not exactly the world's most green option for making single-serve coffee. It's not the biggest mark against it, it's just something to keep in mind because I know a lot of folks ask about that. How green can they be with their single-serve coffee making? With the Creativa and the Dolce Gusto line, not incredibly green, not at the making of this video. Overall though, cool machine, not a bad price point, and it's gonna catch a lot of eyes because I tell you, if I walk in and I see this in somebody's at-home coffee shop, I'm gonna say, what is that? At least that's what I would say if I weren't Brian from Aromacup. So there you go, guys. I hope you found this useful and informative, but if there's anything that I missed or if you have questions or comments, please feel free to get in touch with us in the comments here on this video or visit me on Aromacup.com, where we will be happy to talk coffee with you 24/7. As always, guys, I'm Brian, coming to you from my virtual coffee shop brought to you by Aromacup.com. I want to thank you for joining me. I'll see you next time. Enjoy your cup and take care.